This story takes place when I was around 16 to 17 years old. I lived with just my dad in a little apartment in a questionable area. It was the type of area you'd not want to be out and about when the sun goes down. Up until a certain time, like 10 to 11 PM, there would be a cop or two in the area patrolling and making sure there are no gang-related activities going on. I had a job at a restaurant in the city, which was about a 30-minute car ride and an hour and a half train ride. The train was a couple of blocks away from my place, and since my dad was always too lazy or hungover to drive me, that was my main form of transportation. I went to work around 3 PM and would usually get home around 12 or 1 AM. This was my schedule 4 days a week, aside from having school. I would see a lot of familiar faces on the train because of this, but we never really made conversation with each other. Until one night, when I got out of work late because some assholes wanted to sit in the restaurant past closing. Thanks to them, I missed my train. The next one wasn't scheduled to arrive for another hour. So, having nowhere to go and no money for Lyft or Uber, I sat there waiting. No one was around me, so when this older man showed up, kind of staggering a bit, I assumed he was another drunken hobo in the city trying to catch a train to sleep in. Something about his face gave me deja vu, but I shrugged it off, thinking maybe I've just seen him on the train here and there. He made his way over to me, much to my discomfort, and started up a conversation. He wasn't slurring, but the way he was looking down at me gave me goosebumps. He asked me why I was out there so late, all by myself. I had to reply as to not anger him. I mean, we were alone, and he was close enough to me to pull out a knife or something. Anyway, I told him I was waiting for the train, and he asked which one. Now, the train was color-coded with a strip at the top to indicate whether it goes to north, south, east, or west areas. I took blue, but I lied and said I took green. He looked at the schedule above the benches and saw the green train was coming in 15 minutes, so he said he'd keep me company. For those extremely long 15 minutes, he asked me how long I had been working at So-So restaurant. This made my blood run ice cold. I never told him where I worked. I just looked at him and very timidly answered, "For a year." And he laughed. He said, "Wow, it's already been a whole year, huh?" At this point my skin was itching out of anxiety, and as soon as the green train came, I knew I had no choice but to take it. I said goodbye to him and thanked him for the chat, hoping that would be the end of it. Nope. He suddenly told me that he took the green train too, so he followed me on and sat in a seat behind me. My mind was racing about whether he was going to try to do something to me, like chloroform me or hurt me some other way. But we rode the train in silence. I was trying to figure out how I was going to lose him. There weren't many people riding the train at that hour. Our car was empty, unfortunately. As the ride went on in menacing silence, I could feel him staring down the back of my head. I waited until we got to a stop where there was another person, and I was so relieved to see a woman sitting there. She wasn't boarding, so I immediately got off the train and the man followed me, as expected. I took a seat on a bench next to hers, close enough for her to see and hear everything going on, hoping she would catch on. The man noticed that I was sniffling, allergies and being out in the cold, and asked if I was sick. I told him no, but he insisted on giving me these weird pills he had that was supposedly cold medicine. I declined in a louder voice, "Sorry, I don't accept pills from strangers." This prompted the lady to look at us, and I made eye contact with her. She knew now. Now this went on until a blue train came, and the lady got up, giving me a look that told me to get on with her. So without explanation, I did. She waved me over to sit next to her, and when the man tried to follow, she said, "No, you go sit over there," and made him sit a couple of seats across from us. He chose the one where he could face us, and stared at me the entire time. I was shaking and about to burst into tears. The woman leaned over and whispered to me that she had a pistol. I felt safe with her there. We whispered back and forth about what happened. I told her where I lived and how I was worried he would follow me home. She told me a friend of hers would be boarding the train soon, and when he did, she told me his name was Ray. Ray was filled in about everything and agreed to escort me home. She promised me that I could trust him. The two of them waited with me until I got to my stop. The man, still watching me, started to smile widely, resembling the Cheshire Cat. He shouted, "This is your place, right?" To which I didn't respond and just gave the woman a hug and thanked her. Ray and I hurriedly hopped off the train, and as I looked back, I saw that the woman had pulled out her pistol and told the man to sit back down, even blocking the exit with her body. I finally let myself cry in relief. Ray walked me home and tried to calm me down by telling me about his job and his family. After watching me get inside the gates of my apartment safely, I thanked him profusely for his help. It chills me to think about how that night would have turned out if I hadn't met up with that woman and her friend. I feel extremely lucky to this day. I never saw that man again and eventually stopped thinking about him. But in the back of my head, that creepy, aroused smile of his was burned into my mind, and I couldn't help but wonder just what else he knew about me. A bit of context first. My cat likes to go outside every day. In the morning, he follows us to the door, takes the elevator down with us, and then goes about his day outside until we bring him back home again in the evening. Now, my cat isn't the most punctual guy, so it's pretty common for him to stay much later in the neighborhood. Sometimes well into the night or for several days. Or he gets bored and doesn't play for more than 2 hours and wants to get back inside. The problem is that we're not home, so he just has to wait. My family and I live in an apartment on the first floor, so my cat's solution is to sit under one of our balconies and meow at the top of his lungs to get our attention. When we're home, it works perfectly fine, but when we're not, it's a lot less effective. So our solution was to gently ask our neighbours that have the key to our apartment to bring him up so he doesn't have to wait outside all day. Those that don't have the key sometimes let him inside the building so he's not literally outside. For example, when it's raining. Our apartment is a bit special because it's bigger than the others. So to get inside, there are 2 ways when you get in the main hall. 1, take the stairs to the left and open the door that has 2 locks. Or 2, use the elevator with the special key that goes directly inside our apartment, and the door only has 1 lock. The cat is used to the second option, and me too, because we're both lazy. But when the neighbours that don't have the key let him inside the building, he goes up the stairs and waits. Since I usually use the elevator from the parking 2 floors below, that means I don't see him waiting in the hall, and he meows outside the door to get me to open up for him, or my dad or my mum. All around, we have our habits with my parents and neighbours, and it works fairly well. Now you know how everything goes with my little guy. Anyway, here's what happened a while ago. My parents like the outdoors very much, so I'm usually left alone in the weekends. Generally, it means taking care of the chores and inviting my friends over so we can have the apartment to ourselves, which is pretty nice. This time, I was alone. It was late, 11 p.m-ish, and I was just chilling in the living room before hearing meowing over the sound of the TV. Someone let my cat in the building, and he's waiting outside the door. I took my keys and started opening the first lock. I don't know about other pet owners, but I know my cat meows by heart. It's a kind of rising meow that's very high-pitched and very cute, and that also has a specific rhythm because I've been hearing it nearly every day for 5 years. So I stopped. The noise isn't what it usually is. It's too deep and just off. This isn't my cat outside my door, and he's the only cat around that knows he has to wait by the door and scream to be let inside. By that point, I had stopped halfway through opening the door and waited to hear him again and noticed scratching. My cat never scratches that door. At that point, I'm super weirded out by the situation, but the meowing is getting super loud, and I didn't want the neighbours to be woken up, so I continued with my key. But suddenly, I heard another noise that freaked me out. A cough. For the record, I'm not a very cautious person, and in my whole 21 years of living in this apartment, I must have looked in the peephole a total of maybe 5 times. But a small part of my brain told me to do it that night, and thank God it did. So, I let go of my keys and put my eye against the door and saw it. A man standing there, fucking meowing in front of my door. To say that I was terrified is really an understatement, but my heart stopped. I just stood there petrified for what felt like an hour, I don't really know how long it took for me to move again, but eventually my body just took over, I guess. I did what you'd expect, ran for my phone, stood in the corner of the living room and called the police. By the time they came, there was nobody in front of the door. I can't even remember when the meowing stopped. And they just took my testimony before telling me to be cautious and left. To this day, I still don't know what that meowing guy wanted. I'm not sure I want to anyway. I also don't know how he got inside the building since you need a key to access it, and how he knew that I would open the door if he imitated my cat in front of it. At least I will be careful from now on. And my cat eventually came back since then. He's sleeping in my bed as I'm writing this.